Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samches, Daf 68 of Masechta Yevamos. Friends, who could tell me? Who could tell me what Daf 68 talks about? What the heck does Daf 68? Right, exactly. Right. Being posel and eno maichel. Remember that, right? We saw a Mishnah at the end of the daf yesterday about different kinds of people who are posel and not machil. So we're going to talk about that for a while. Let's just say that, friends. Let's jump in. We're on daf Samaches Amud Aleph, starting with a ve'acherish, the second line of the daf, and a fellow who is deaf. The assumption is that a fellow who is deaf is not a bardas. He doesn't have das, and therefore he cannot midoraisa be mekadesh a woman. And we're saying that a cheresh, a fellow who's deaf, posel ve'eno maichil, that if he marries a baskoin, so she was initially able to eat truma when she grew up in her father's house, she now marries a Yisrael, so then she's no longer allowed to eat truma. So we're saying that if this cheresh marries a baskoin, since she's not allowed to eat truma, and also if he is a Kohen and she's a Yisraelis, a Bas Yisrael, so then she cannot eat Truma on account of him. So now says the Gemara, Ibas Kohen li Yisrael he posula. So if she is a Bas Kohen and he is a Yisrael, so then on his account she's no longer allowed to eat Truma. Kanyo b'takanta d'Rabbanon, because midrabanon the Kiddushin works, and therefore he's a Yisrael, she's a Bas Kohen, she's no longer allowed to eat Truma. Vi Bas Yisrael a Kohen, and if we're talking about Bas Yisrael who marries a Kohen, and the Cheresh is a Kohen, so then Lo Maichil, she cannot eat Truma on his account, Kinin Kaspa Amrachmona V'Hala Bar Kinyanu, because the Pasuk says, what does the Pasuk say? The Kohen Kiyik Nefesh Kinin Kaspa Hu Yochel B'Lid Beisam Yochel B'Lachma. So it says that if a Kohen makes an acquisition, so then this acquisition will be able to eat truma, and of course kiddushin is a kinyan, and therefore since this cheresh is unable, he doesn't have das, and therefore the assumption is he doesn't have das, and therefore he's not able to make a kinyan, and therefore since he's not able to make a kinyan, so his wife doesn't have a proper kinyan, and she cannot eat truma on his account. So now moving on, the Mishnah discussed a situation where you have a fellow who is a yingul who is 9 years old and a day. So we want the Havamina is that we're talking about a shomeres yavam, right? You have Reuven's married to Sarah, Reuven dies, and now Sarah needs to do yibum with Shimon. Shimon is 9 years old and a day. So Limai. So now, okay, so what? Ilimifsel. If we're saying, okay, so you have Sarah, she's a Shomeres Yavam, you have Shimon, Shimon's 9 years old in a day. And if we're saying that, okay, she's not allowed to eat Truma, she's Posel. She's not, meaning she's a Bas Kohen, he's a Yisrael, and now she's not allowed to eat Truma. But Kohenami Mifsel Posel. But even if Shimon was younger than 9 years and a day, she would not be allowed to eat truma, because right, it says v'shava. What does the pasuk say? Where's that pasuk? It says that she. Let's see. Ugrusha v'zera ela v'shava al beisavia kinurah. She goes back, but here she hasn't gone back because she's a shomeres yavam. So regardless of if Shimon is 9 years old in a day or not, even if he's younger than that, she would not be allowed to eat. She would be possible from eating truma. And if we're talking about, well, he's a Kohen and she's a Bas Yisrael, and we're saying that on his account she's unable to eat truma, well, Gadol Nami Lo Maichil. The Mishnah had given one of its examples of not being Maichil is a Yavam, that when you have a Sarah as a Shomeres Yavam, even if Shimon is 20 years old, whatever it is, he's old enough, still she would be unable to eat truma, because they're not actually married yet. So what is the situation where it's significant that he's 9 years old and a day? Again, if it's to say that if she's a Bas Kohen, she's possible for being Truma, that even if he was less than that, she would be possible. And if she's a Bas Yisrael, and we're saying he's not allowed to be Meichel, even a Gadol wouldn't be able to be Meichel. So what's the significance of this fellow who's 9 years old in a day? Amar Abai says, Abai, Hocha biyovam ben teisha shanim v'yom echad haba yivimto oskinun. So says Abai, look, here we're talking about not a shomeris yavam, but an actual yibum. That Ruvain died, Sarah and Shimon do yibum. The thing is, Shimon is 9 years old in a day. The midoraisa kanyale. That now midoraisa, it's a marriage, right? He's 9 years old in a day. Midoraisa biaso bia. He's able to sleep with Sarah, and it will have deoraisa significance, and therefore what? And therefore, Shimon is 9 years old in a day. Midoraisa, it's yibum. So I would think, so I might think she should be able to eat truma, right? If he's 9 years old in a day and he's a kohen and they did yibum, I would think that okay, they're now married and she should be able to eat truma. Komash malon. So we're saying that no, that's not the case. Also, bias ben tes shonim v'yom echad kimayim begadol. That we treat the bia of Shimon, who is 9 in a day, as if he was an adult who just did maimer. It's not enough to be considered as if they're married, so that she'll be able to eat truma. Not so. Omerle Rave. Now Rave says to Abaye. So, if that's so, that we're talking about a Shimon is 9 years old in a day, and he does Yibum with Sarah, and he does Yibum with Sarah, and we're saying that she's unable to eat Truma on his account. When the Mishnah then continues and gives another example where it's posel ve'eno meichel, and that is when Shimon, well, in a situation where we're uncertain if he's 9 years old in a day or if he's younger than that. Hashta vaday ben tes lo meichel, but I don't understand why the Mishnah needs to even entertain that havamina, because if you're saying that even when he's definitely 9 years old in a day, still he's unable to be meichel truma to Sarah. If she's a Bas Yisrael and he's a Kohen, she would not be able to eat truma on his account. So sofik mi boya. Certainly then, if we're uncertain if he's yet 9 in a day, certainly he would be unable to be meichel. So I don't understand why does the Mishnah even have to list that? So Ela Amaravi rather says over b'mentesha shonim v'yom echad dehanach psulim katoni. The pastor b'biyosin says Rave, the significance of this fellow who's 9 years old in a day is regarding other psulim. So for example, a nosin, a mamzer, right? People are unable to marry into the congregation, and if they do, so then it's posel, right? So we're saying that right, if they marry into the congregation, so if she's like a Bas Kohen, she's no longer allowed to eat truma. So we're saying, so if this boy is already 9 years old in a day, so again, so if he's 9 years old in a day, the hanach psulim, with these other psulim. So for example, if he's a mamzer, and he's 9 years old in a day, and he marries a Bas Kohen, so then she's not allowed to eat truma. They're at the pasta b'biyosin, that their bia is posel. Uchedetanya, and as we learn in the Brisa, ben teisha shonim v'yom echad, that if you have a fellow who's 9 years old in a day, Ger Ammoni, he's a convert from Ammon, Umoavi, or from Moab, right? These are communities who are not allowed to marry into the Jewish people. Mitzri v'Adomi, an Egyptian or an Edomite who need to wait 3 generations before they can marry into the call. Kusi, Nosin, Cholo, Umamzer, all of these other people, Shabo al Kohenes, Levi of Israelis, and this fellow who's 9 years old in a day sleeps with a Kohen, a Levi, a Yisrael, Pisalua, then she's no longer allowed to eat truma. So for example, if you have a bas kohen, so then if this fellow who's 9 years old in the day and he's like a mamzer sleeps with this bas kohen, so then she would be unable to eat truma. Or even if she's a Leviah or Yisraelis and she was married to a kohen and she has kids and now she's allowed to eat truma, and then this fellow who's 9 in a day sleeps with her, so now she's no longer allowed to eat truma. So that's what Rava wants to say, that this situation where we're talking about a fellow who's 9 years old in a day, he's talking about by these other psulim, by like a mamzer or something. If the kid is 9 years old in a day, so he's able to be posel this woman. Say v'hamig tikutani seifa. But 1 second, if we go weiter, if we look at the Mishnah on tomorrow's daf, it says im einan ru'uyin lavo b'Yisrael arei elu psulim, that if they're not able to come into the congregation, then they're arei elu posel, then they're posel. Which implies that this part of the Mishnah is not talking about mamzer and nosin in those examples. So Reisha Psule Kol, Sefer Psule Kehuna, to which the Gemara says no. The Reisha, when we're saying, according to Rava, when we're saying that 9 years old in a day is posel ve'enu meichel, so that is talking about a situation of like nosin, mamzer, situations like that. And in the next Mishnah, when it mentions im einin ru'uyin love will be so, if they're not able to come into Yisrael, so that's talking about like a cholol, for example, something like that. So we're talking about two separate cases. Sorry, I need to clarify something from a few minutes ago. So when we say kohenes leviv Yisraelis, so a kohenes, right, if she's able to eat truma, but if this nosin, mamzer, right, any of these people who's 9 years old in the day sleeps with her, she can no longer eat truma. And in Leviah and Yisraelis, once this fellow sleeps with her, right, if he's like a mamzer or something, so then she's no longer allowed to marry a kohen anymore. Okay. Kufa, we said earlier, ben tes shanim v'yom echad, that this fellow who's 9 years old in the day, ger Amoni, Moavi, if he's a convert from Ammon, Moab, Mitzri, Ba'adomi, Kusi, Nosan, Cholol, Mamzer, Shaboa, Kohenes, Leviah, Yisraelis, who slept with a Kohenes, Levi, Yisraelis, Psalon, so they are now apostles. I just said a second ago, right, that the Kohenes cannot eat truma, Levi, Yisraelis would be unable to marry Kohanim anymore. Rabbi Yossi Omer, says Rabbi Yossi, we're going to explain tomorrow what exactly this means. Kol shezaro posel, kol she'ein zaro posel, eino posel. Look, if the child is posel, so then it's posel. If the child is not posel, then it's not posel. Meaning, for example, if you have like an Adomi or a Mitzri, so it's only for 3 generations that they're not allowed to marry into the congregation after they convert. But let's say you get up to the 3rd generation, so then or the 2nd generation, so then their children would already be able to marry in. So Rabbi Yossi is saying, look, right, Kol Shazaru posel. If their children, right, so let's say 1st generation, their children are also posel. So then they themselves will be posel, even the 1st generation. But Kol she'ein zaro posel, eino posel. But for example, the 2nd generation, whose children would be able to marry into the congregation, so then even the 2nd generation would not be posel. Okay, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, Kol she'atanose bito, atanose amanoso, Kol she'ein atanose bito, atanose amanoso. Says Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, and also the Gemara is going to get into this tomorrow, that Kol she'atanose is bito, if you can marry his daughter, atanose amanoso, you can marry his widow. Kol she'ein atanose bito, atanose amanoso. And if you would be unable to marry his daughter, then you'd be unable to marry his widow either. So now, fact the Gemara, Minoane Mile. Oh, how do we know this? How do we know what? How do we know that if you have epis like any of these psulim, nos and mamzer, right, any of these people who sleep with a bas kohen or even a levi of Yisraelis, right? So then they're going to be possible from truma or possible to marry kohanim. How do we know this? Where do we have a pasuk for this? So Minoane Mile, Amavuda Amarav. Oh, so Buddha says the name of Rav that the pasuk says uvas kohen kisiyeh leish zar. All right, that if you have a bas kohen and she marries an ish zar, this foreign fellow, that if she sleeps with one of these posel people, then she becomes Pasuk. Okay, so we want to learn that out from this pasuk. Vaskoin kisiyah li'ishzar. I'm repeating that. So kivin shnivela the pasuk la psala. Okay, that we learn it out from that pasuk. Perfect. Gemara. Hami boile the kamar achmana vaskoin tibin siba lizar lo seichel. To which Gemara says, whoa, 1 second. In mikru yotzei midei pshuta. You can't just say that pasuk is talking about a baskoin who sleeps with a mamzer, for example. I mean, if you look at the simple explanation of the pasuk, it means baskoin kisiyah li'ishzar. If you have a baskoin, she marries a yisrael, she can't eat truma anymore. That's all it means. Nothing to do with a mamzer or a nosen or any of these other psulim. So, and for the Gemara, hahi mi v'shavel beisavir kinurea milechem avia soichel nafka. No, that is learnt out from the pasuk that says that in the event that a baskoin gets divorced from her Yisrael husband or he dies, so it says that she can go back home and she can eat truma when she gets back home to her father's house, right? From the fact that the Torah says that when she goes back home to her father's house, she's allowed to eat truma. Michlal dmeikar lo achla. The implication being that when she was married to this kohen, to this Yisrael, right, this Bas Kohen, when she was married to this Yisrael, she's not allowed to eat truma. Only if he dies or they get divorced and she goes back home can she eat truma. So I know from that pasuk that when a Bas Kohen is married to Yisrael, she's not allowed to eat truma. So then, what do I learn out from the pasuk of Vaskoin kisiyah li'ish zar? So we learn out that, the nosen and the moms are these psulim who sleep with a kohen, and also we said a levi of Yisraelis. So then she's unable to eat truma. But practically, Gemara, 1 second. But you can't just learn out from that other pasuk that a Bas Kohen who's married to Yisrael is not allowed to eat truma, because in a chinami, but it's only from the implication of an essay, right? So what does it say? That when she goes back to her father's house, she can eat truma, implying that when she's not back in her father's house, when she's married to this Yisrael, she's not allowed to eat truma. But lav b'michal essay, as we've seen in the past, that an implied negative commandment that derives from a positive commandment, right? When you go back to your father's house, eat truma, therefore implying that when you're not yet back at your father's house, when you're married, you cannot eat truma. That only has the force, significance of a mitzvah's essay. So therefore, kasav achmone hay lelav. So therefore, that's why we need the pasuk of Uvaskoin kisiyah li'ish zar, as the pasuk continues. Kisiyah li'ish zar hi b'trumas hakachim lo sochel. I can't read these things; they're too small. Yeah, I think it's sochel. I can't read the things; they're too small. But anyways, when she goes back, when she's married to this other fellow, she's not allowed to eat truma. So kilu, I need that pasuk to teach me that she'll be over on a lav if she eats truma when she's married to this Yisrael. And therefore that pasuk is not available to teach these psulim, right, these nosins and mamzers and these pasul people. So, and for the Gemara, no. Lav mi v'chozor lo yochel kodesh nafka. No. The pasuk says, v'chozor lo yochel kodesh. Any non-Kohen is not allowed to eat kodesh. And we're assuming that if this Bas Kohen is married to a Yisrael, so she has whatever status he has. And if he's not allowed to eat Kodesh, then she's also Memele not allowed to eat Kodesh. And it says, right, Lo Yochal Kodesh, that's a Lav. So the Lav is learned out from that pasuk. And therefore the first pasuk of Bas Kohen Kisiyah li'ish zar is available to teach these psulim people being posel, a Kohenis Levi of Yisraelis. It says the Gemara, no, Alumi bar le gufe. 1 second. That pasuk of V'chozar lo yochal Kodesh is necessary to teach that a non-Kohen is not allowed to eat Kodesh. But says the Gemara, Trei v'chozar ksive, that there are 2 psukim that mention v'chozar lo yochal Kodesh. Nu, One pasuk is a pasuk that we just said, V'chozor lo yochal kodesh, toshav kohen v'sachel yochal kodesh. But then we have another pasuk that says, Uvaskohen kisiya almanu ugusha v'zera ein la. I'm reading from the pasuk, V'shava be'savia kinurah milechem v'el socha v'chozor lo yochal bo. So we have two psukim that say that a zar cannot be eating truma. So one of them is to teach just that a non-kohen is prohibited from eating truma, but also the other one is going to teach us that a bas kohen who's married to Yisrael is not allowed to eat truma either. And then that other pasuk of bas kohen kisiya li'ish zar is once again available, and we can learn out from there that these psulim are going to be posel this kohenis levi Yisraelis. Fine, but nonetheless, no, that's not going to work. Bakati miboile lichd Reb Yossi. No, still we need both of those v'chozor lo yochal kodeshes, because one is to teach, of course, that a non-kohen is prohibited from eating kodesh, but the other one we need, like Reb Yossi, lichd Reb Yossi Reb Chanina. Reb Yossi Reb Chanina v'chozor zarus omarti lach v'lo aninus. When it says v'chozor lo yochal kodesh, yeah, non-kohanim are not allowed to eat kodesh, but a kohen, even if he's an onen, is allowed to eat truma. So we need those psukim. So we need both of those psukim, right? We need one pasuk to teach me that a non-kohen is prohibited from eating truma. We need the other pasuk to teach me that a kohen who is an onen is allowed to eat truma. And therefore, we need the original pasuk of Bas Kohen K'sei Li'ish Zar to teach me that simply that if you have a Bas Kohen who's married to a Yisrael, she's not allowed to eat truma. And then we don't have a pasuk available for the psulim, for the nasan and the mamzer. Same for the Gemara, no. Rabbi Yosef Reb Chanina min zar v'chozar nafka. No, Rabbi Yosef Reb Chanina is learned out from the extra word v'chol. You could have said zar le'yochal kodesh, it says v'chozar le'yochal kodesh, so that is where he learns out his opinion from about the onen being able to learn to teach truma. And once again, the pasuk of Vas Kohen K'sei Li'ish Zar is available for us to learn, like the mamzers and those fellows. Fine, where am I? But still, I need that pasuk of Vas Kohen K'sei Li'ish Zar for the following brayso. She chozeres l'trume v'ino chozeres l'chazav v'shok. That if you have a Bas Kohen who is married to Yisrael and he dies, or they get divorced, and she goes back home, so while she's allowed to eat trume, she's not allowed to eat chazav v'shok. She's not allowed to eat like the emurim of the of korbanos, right? That the Kohen can eat. She's not allowed to eat those things. V'amar Rav Chisda says of Chisda, Amar Ravina Barav Shila, Mikra, where do we have a pasuk? Dichsev is the pasuk says, Bas Kohen K'sei Li'ish Zar Hi B'Shumas HaKodshim Lo Sochel, that if you have a Bas Kohen who's married to a Yisrael, so then she's not allowed to eat Kodshim Lo Sochel B'Murav Min HaKodshim, that she doesn't eat from that which is taken up, is separated from the Kodshim, i.e., like the Chazeh V'Shok, the Emurim, the parts that go to the Kohen. So we learn out from that pasuk that while she's allowed to go back to eating trumish, she's not allowed to eat chazeh v'shok. So that pasuk is not available to teach the nasan and the mamzer. So it says the Gemara, well, if all we want to learn out from that pasuk is that she's not allowed to eat chazeh v'shok, so then it could have said hi b'kodshim lo socha. What does it mean? B'trumas hakodshim. So it's to teach us both things. That yes, she's not allowed to eat chazeh v'shok, but also that these psulim like the nasan and the mamzer would be posel a kohenes levi Yisraelis. So okay, fine. So we learn out from that pasuk of Uvas Kohen K'sei Li'ish Zar that all of these psulim are posel. So now frag the Gemara. Ashkechon kohenes levi Yisraelis minolan. Friends, you hear the kasha that I knew. So we've been talking about what was the pasuk? Uvas Kohen K'sei Li'ish Zar. The pasuk only mentions a bas kohen, to which we learn out. So, for example, if you have a nosen or a mamzer sleeps with a bas kohen, then she's no longer allowed to eat truma. But how do I know? Right? Also, we mentioned Leviya, Yisraelis. How do we know this? So Ashkelon, I'm going to read that again. Ashkelon Kohenes, so we found a Kohenes that she becomes possible from eating Truma. Levi V'Yisraelis Minolan, how do we know to include Levi V'Yisraelis as well? Kedam Rab Abba, it's like Rab Abba, Amar Rav, Bas Uvas, right? It could have just said Bas, but there's the extra Vav, Uvas, Achanami Bas Uvas. Here also it says, right, Uvas Kohen Kisiyah Le'ish Zar, so the extra Vav comes to include also the Levi V'Yisraelis. Fine. So Amra Bas Uvas, Achanami Bas Uvas. Fine. Keman Rabbi Akiva. So this sounds like Rabbi Akiva's opinion to Darish Vavin, who learns out things from extra Vavs. Afilu Temer Rabbanon, to which the Gemara says no. It could even be the rabbis, because Kulei Uvas Kor Yisera Hu, because it's not just a Vav that's extra there. There's an extra two words there, right? Meaning, if you look at Sefer Vayikra Perek Chav Beis Pasuk Yud Beis, it says Uvas Kohen Kisiyah Leish Zar Yibatruma Sakochim Lo Sochel, and then the next pasuk says Uvas Kohen Kitia Almano Gusha. You could just skip Uvas Kohen, right? It could just say Kisia Almano Gusha. That Kilu the Bas Kohen we talked about in the first pasuk. Now in the second pasuk, if she gets divorced or becomes widow, etc. So I don't need it to say Uvas Kohen in both psukim. So the fact that Uvas Kohen is entirely extra in the second pasuk, that is where we learn out from its inclusion, even though it doesn't need to be there. That is where we learn out that it's not just a Bas Kohen, it's also a Levi V'Yisraelis. Fine. So fine. So all we mentioned in that pasuk is Truma, right? Bas Kohen Kisiyah Leish Zar, he betruma sagadashim lo sochel. So that pasuk teaches us about Truma. How do I know also that by a Bas Yisrael or a Leviah, that if a apostle, like a Nasan or Mamzer, sleeps with her, since she can't marry a Kohen, right? The pasuk only mentioned that they can't eat Truma. But how do we know that it also means that they cannot marry a Kohen? So says the Gemara, well, Atu Leviah V'Yisraelis lo lichuna ma'binan lu. To which the Gemara says, well, obviously when it comes to Kohenes and Yisraelis, when it comes to Leviah V'Yisraelis, it's saying that if they sleep with an Nasan or Mamzer, so then they're now not allowed to sleep, right? They'd be unable to marry a Kohen. Because if it's saying that they can't eat Truma, they can't eat Truma anyways. They're Leviim, they're Yisraelis, they're not eating Truma anyway. So obviously what it's preventing them from doing, what's making them puzzle, is that they're unable to marry a Kohen anymore. Alam alone. But then the Gemara says, wait, why are you assuming that a Leviah V'Yisraelis are unable to eat Truma? Mishkachasla, I could find an example. That if they're able to eat Truma on account of their children, right? So for example, you have a Leviah V'Yisraelis, they marry a Kohen, there's children, so they're able to eat Truma. And let's say that then they sleep with a Nasan or Mamzer or someone that's possible to them. So now they're no longer allowed to eat Truma. So therefore maybe the pasuk is coming to say that by a Leviah V'Yisraelis, if they sleep with one of these apostle people, so they're not allowed to eat Truma anymore in a situation where they were able to eat Truma on account of their children. So Bishvil b'noah kal v'chomer. Well, that I don't need a pasuk to teach me that they're no longer allowed to eat Truma, because I could learn that out logically. Ma kohenes the b'kedusha denafsha achla pasila. Well, if you have a kohenes who is able to be eating Truma on her own account, and nonetheless, if she sleeps with one of these apostle people, she's no longer allowed to eat Truma. Leviah V'Yisraelis to lo achla ela b'shvil b'noah lo kol shekain. When it comes to Leviah and Yisraelis who are not able to eat Truma on their own account, they're only allowed to eat Truma on account of their children, then certainly if they sleep with a apostle person, they'd be unable to continue eating Truma. So therefore I don't need a pasuk to teach me that. Therefore the pasuk must be teaching me about that they're not allowed to marry Kohens. But to which the Gemara says, well, that's not necessarily a good Kavachomer, because Vian Osenes, I can make the exact opposite argument that Kohenes, the Kaddish Gufa Pasla, that a Kohenes who she herself is holy and she's allowed to eat Truma, so she's we treat her more stringently, and if she sleeps with a apostle person, then she's no longer allowed to eat Truma. But hadlo kadosh gufa lo pasila. But a Leviya v'Yisraelis who are not inherently holy or are not inherently able to eat truma, so then I would say in that case where we don't have to be as stringent, and even if they sleep with one of these apostle people, they can continue eating truma, and therefore I can make the argument that I need this pasuk to teach me that when it comes to Leviya and Yisraelis, if they sleep with this apostle person, they can no longer eat truma. So if that's the case, that the pasuk is teaching me that by Leviya and Yisraelis, if they sleep with a apostle person, they're no longer allowed to eat truma, then how do I know that they also would not be allowed to marry a Kohen? I can make a kavachomer from a divorcee, that if you have a bas Kohen who's divorced, then when she goes back home, she's allowed to eat truma, asur lechuna, but she's not allowed to marry a Kohen. Zo shasur b'truma, a Leviya or a Yisraelis who's not allowed to eat truma, enudin psula lechuna, so then certainly she would be psula she'd be unable to marry a Kohen. Right? That if this apostle person sleeps with them, they're not allowed to eat trumas, and they also memela would be unable to marry a Kohen. To which the Gemara says, but can you just, warn people based on logical arguments? Right? And say that you're not allowed to, that there's mamash Allah based on a logical argument. To which the Gemara says, no, it's not. We're not warning based on a logical argument. The logical argument is just clarifying what is sort of apparent already, which is that if she's not allowed to eat truma because of this apostle person, so memela also she'd be unable to marry a Kohen as well. Friends, that was daf Samches of Masechta Yevamos. The beginning of the daf, we continued speaking about situations that are posel ve'eno machil. We talked about a person who's deaf. We saw machlokas between Abaye and Rava about how to understand what the Mishnah is saying about a fellow who's 9 years old and a day. Abaye says that it's talking about a fellow who's 9 years old and a day, and he does yibum with his brother's widow. So then I might think that since he's 9 and a day and his bia counts, therefore they should be considered married and she should be able to eat truma. Says Abaye that what the Mishnah is saying is that no, she's not allowed to eat truma. Rava says no, it's talking about something entirely different, which is that it's talking about a apostle person like a nosin or a mamzer, that if he sleeps with a Kohen, the Kohenes, Leviya, Yisraelis, so then they would be unable to eat truma and unable to marry a Kohen. And then we just kind of spent the rest of the daf learning sources, scriptural sources for how we know that a apostle person who sleeps with a Kohenes, Leviya, or a Yisraelis would make them unable to eat truma and unable to marry a Kohen. Friends, that was daf Samches of Masechta Yevamos. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.